Thank you so much, and thank you to both WMAY, the State Journal Register, and News Channel 20 for allowing us all and allowing the voters to hear from all of us. This election is so important. It helps determine whether or not we let the status quo in Springfield continue to fail Illinoisans, or if we want to try something new. You know, my family came here 150 years ago. They chose Illinois because it offered both the opportunities and the resources for them to succeed. The resources are still here, but the opportunities, as well as the people, are leaving in record numbers. And that's exactly why a year ago I knew I had to jump into this fight, because we can't wait any longer to make Illinois the place that we're all proud to live. We can't wait to make the changes that are necessary, and it's been an absolute honor and a privilege to serve over the past year, but it's proven even more why now is the time we need changes. You know, it's taken generations to get into this mess, but it's going to take a new generation of leadership to make the changes we need to see in Springfield. So I look forward to your questions.
Our next candidate in the 95th House District is Christopher Hicks.
Yes, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, taking the opportunity to listen to all of us. As Representative Bourne stated, this election is very important. It's time to choose between the status quo and the decades of misleadership that have got us here. As all of you know, I'm running for state representative of the 95th District, and I made the decision to seek office because the decision's simple. It's time to move forward in a new direction. And our eyes lay witness to some of the darkest hours our state's history has ever seen. 8 months without a budget is unacceptable, and it just shows that both parties have failed us. Ultimately, as Ms. Bourne stated, it's time to move forward in a new direction, a direction that has leadership and gets us out of this mess that took decades to get into. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here and taking the time to listen to all of us. Thank you.
And now finally in the 95th, Dennis Scobbie.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Scobbie, and I thank you for the opportunity to be part of this forum tonight. I am running for state representative to offer voters a candidate with a lifetime of leadership in bringing people together to solve problems. I've also been very experienced to work with issues in affecting the hardworking families of the 95th District. I am from Litchfield, and I've been a teacher for 40 years. I was a high school baseball coach for 35 years and very proud to lead our teams to many tournament championships. I have founded and coached the Scholastic Bowl program and was honored to be inducted into the Scholastic Bowl Coaches Hall of Fame. I've been an adjunct faculty member at Lincoln Land Community College for 27 years and started the college dual credit program there. I'm a school board member in Litchfield, and because I have retired from teaching, I still wanted to stay involved in education. I'm married to my wife, Luann, for 39 years. She is a retired special education teacher. I have 2 adopted daughters. Faith is a music teacher, and my youngest daughter, Deanna, is a social worker. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
We now move to the Republican candidates in the 96th House District. We'll begin with Cindy Deadrick Wolfer.
Thank you and good evening. I too appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. As I said, my name is Cindy Deadrick Wolfer, and with the exception of a few years when my father served this great nation as a member of the United States Air Force, I am a lifelong resident of Decatur, Illinois. Since my announcement to run for the House of Representatives, I've often been asked why. My answer is simple. As an adult, I have worked in my community for over 40 years and have had the honor of working alongside many, many individuals that are intent not only on providing for their families, but also making our communities vibrant and attractive. But I've also witnessed how issues at the state level can negatively affect all those local efforts. As your state representative, I will use my knowledge that I've gained from my career as a small business person, my experience in corporate America, and my understanding of the needs of local communities. We need to change, and I want to be a voice for growth and change. Thank you.
Also in the 96th, Mr. Gary Pierce.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. I'll try to speak as best as I can. My voice is kind of trying to get away from me. My name is Gary Pierce. I'm a therapist, and I'm also a minister. I've been involved with politics now since I was 24 years old. I just can't sit still and watch some of the things that's going on, not only in this state, but in this whole country and the world. The reason these things are going on is because what the governor is saying, that we have people in office that's been there for 50 years. And right now, the Republicans are outnumbered 71 to 47 in the House. So if you look at that, it's going to be hard for him to get his turnaround agenda started. But I want to be a part of helping him get the turnaround agenda started, and I will be the best candidate to beat Sue Shear.
We now move to the 99th House District. The Republican candidates will begin with challenger Kent Gray.
Thanks, Jim. It's an honor to be here in the State Journal Register building. 27 years ago, I was a still photographer just getting out of high school, and I landed my first front page photo in the Journal Register. I was very proud of that. But my life took a little different path than being a photojournalist or a news reporter. I ended up going to get my Bachelor's of Business Administration, my MBA, my law degree. I stayed here in Springfield because I care very much about this community, and I think it brings a lot to our families. In 1999, I ran and won for the Lincoln Land Community College Board of Trustees, and after 18 years, I think I have a record of representing the 350,000 people that live in the Lincoln Land Community College District, the largest geographic district in the state of Illinois. I've served as chairman and vice chairman. I've been endorsed by the local Republican Party in 11 races over my last 20 years, and I'm very proud to be a citizen of Springfield, and I hope to fill Raymond Poe's shoes in the 99th District.
And now the incumbent representative in the 99th, Sara Wojcicki Jimenez.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having all of us here tonight. I'm very grateful to the SJR, WMAY, and News Channel 20 for having us. I'm also very thankful that just a few months ago that the Sangamon County Republican Organization appointed me to be the state representative to serve the residents of the 99th District. I was honored by the appointment, and I take that responsibility very seriously. In the last 3 months, I've been traveling all around the district, literally visiting with hundreds of people and organizations about the priorities of the 99th District. What I've learned is that we need to end this crisis now. We need to address the issues of the budget, and we need to do that quickly and with certainty. My experience as a journalist and as a state worker, I think, makes me very well equipped to serve the residents of the 99th District. I grew up in Springfield. I attended grade school and high school here, and I'm just looking forward to the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Candidates, thank you. It's now time for questions from our panel. We will alternate the order of responses by district and within each district. Our first question will begin with the candidates in the 96th House District. The state's dismal budget situation is affecting almost all decisions that lawmakers must make. Is it possible to balance the state budget through cuts alone? If so, please describe specific areas you would target for cuts and what impact they would have on the state's most vulnerable citizens. We'll begin with Gary Pierce.
Of course, one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to actually raise taxes. I don't think anybody want to see that happen. But it's been a mess so long, and the thing is that we have to do something. And in order to get to balance the budget, we're going to have to make cuts in areas that it's going to hurt some people. And those areas is basically where we are top heavy as far as with the budget. I've mentioned before that there's a lot of different agencies that's doing the same thing that other agencies are doing. And Governor Rauner, with his turnaround agenda, is trying to do that with the Comptroller's Office and the Treasurer's Office. And he's already shown what he could do with the Technology Department. So if we just can get enough people in the House to support him as well as in the Senate, he'll be able to get his turnaround agenda done, and then we can move forward. I mean, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's what I tell my clients. And that's the same thing I'm telling the constituents. Do you want to keep on doing the same thing over and over again? It's time to move forward.
Thank you. Cindy Deadrick Wolfer.
Thank you. No, I don't believe it's possible to balance our budget with just cuts. There just are not enough taxpayers in this state of Illinois to handle the deficits that we have and the bills that we have. So I think we have to do three things. We have to reform. We have to look for ways within our government that we can make changes and look at possibly selling the Thompson Center in Chicago, consolidating some offices, doing things like that, making some reforms. We're also going to have to look at cuts, and the major thing that we're going to have to look at is job and business growth. Only through the ability to be able to have increased income is when we have businesses that are thriving and creating jobs so that the income and the revenue is there. Only through growth can we get out of this.
Now to the 99th, the question again, can the budget be balanced through cuts alone? If so, where specifically would you cut and what would the impact be? And this question goes first to Sara Wojcicki Jimenez.
I think the solution to the budget crisis is going to be one of compromise. We have a situation where we are at gridlock and complete impasse, as everyone knows. You have got to look for cuts and efficiencies and reforms first. It's the only way that we're going to get to a place that puts Illinois back on the right track. I think there are certainly efficiencies to be made, as some of the other guests have mentioned. One of the things that I hear from a lot of people is procurement reform. That is an area that not only vendors, but people at the state agencies say that we need. That could be a significant savings, hundreds of millions of dollars. I think that we need cuts and reforms, and we have to figure out how much we have to spend, and that's all we can spend. Over the years, the lawmakers and the governors have spent more than we've taken in, and that practice has to stop.
And now to Kent Gray.
I made the comment in the editorial board that if you give tax money to Democrats, it's like giving heroin to a drug user. They spend it all, they use it all, and there's nothing left. Every bit you give it to them, they will use up. And historically, over the last 10 years, we've seen the leaders in Illinois, some Republicans, but almost all Democrats, have spent every dollar they've been giving in this temporary tax increase. And they didn't get any farther ahead in paying off the bills or balancing the budget than we were to start with. It's my belief that the Republican state representative from Springfield, Illinois, ought to be the candidate, ought to be the elected official who says, I'm not voting for a tax increase. Frankly, if the person from Springfield, who's a Republican in a plus 20 district Republican, I mean, it's one of the most Republican districts in the state, can't be the one who says we're not gonna raise taxes, then we will never not raise taxes. And I think we need to make the cuts. We're about 10% off balance, about $7 billion. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's going to be quick, but we need to make those cuts and live within our means.
Again, the question is on balancing the state budget through cuts alone. Can it be done? And if so, where and what would the impact be? And that question in the 95th goes first to Christopher Hicks.
Yes, first and foremost, for the record, I will never propose tax increases until all legislative reforms have been exhausted. With that being said, I do not want to raise taxes. No one wants to pay more in taxes. But as you said, can it be done? I would hope it could be done, but ultimately I do not believe so. I would like to keep the tax increases low and reasonable, although, like I said, no one wants to pay more in taxes. On specifics, I would like to take a 10% cut across the board for all government agencies. I think that would be a good start, and then we could start to see where we can make other cuts. But as I indicated and said before, we have to exhaust all legislative reforms before we try to raise taxes, and that would be a benefit to our taxpayers.
Now to Dennis Scobbie.
We need to set the right priorities for our state and produce a balanced budget that reflects the commitment to education and create a job growth environment. It's time to take a serious look from the top to the bottom. We need to get rid of the waste, the fraud, the corrupt government, review unfunded mandates on businesses and school districts. Everybody's got to work together in this particular situation. I've had experience with this being a teacher. A number of years ago, we had to make a 10% cut in our district, and we sat down as teachers and as administrators and talked about everything. What could we cut? And we were able to do that. We figured it out. And I think we can do the same thing here, but we've got to work together.
Representative Avery Bourne.
The culture of spending in Springfield is completely out of control. Over the past 12 years, we've had unbalanced budgets. We tried a temporary tax increase, and the budget still wasn't balanced. I think that we have to, as has been mentioned, we have to grow our way out of this. We also have to reform the way we do state government. And as a legislator, I think we need to start with ourselves. We have to show that we are serious about changing the way we spend money. I think we should phase out legislative pensions. I'm choosing not to take a pension. I also think there's Medicaid fraud that some studies have shown could be hundreds of millions of dollars of savings. Also earlier, the comptroller-treasurer merger was mentioned. That's $12 million of savings. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what we'll have to find in the state budget. But we have all of these minds up here coming up with ideas. We have 118 minds in the House alone talking about how we can save money. That's what we have to do. We have to change the conversation in Springfield from how much money can we spend to how can we do government effectively and efficiently.
Continuing on with the state budget, Governor Rauner has said that passage of a budget must be linked to passage of at least portions of his turnaround agenda. Democratic leaders and even some Republicans, such as former Governor Edgar, have disagreed with that assessment. Do you agree with how the governor has approached the budget standoff, and why or why not? We'll start with the 99th with Mr. Gray.
Well, you know, I supported Governor Rauner last year when he was running for office, and I think he needs to use the tools that were given to him by the citizens to be able to negotiate a good deal with the legislature this year. I do not think that that he should be required to essentially unilaterally disarm and give away his leverage in the political process to come up with some of the reforms that he wants to do. I think at the end of the day, and I've learned a few things about the art of the deal this year, one of the things you have to be able to do is to use those, levers that you're given. And I think if he basically says he doesn't want to talk about that until the budget's done, the Democrats want to spend money. The governor wants to put in more efficiencies into state government. Those two things are frankly not exactly mutually exclusive. So you have the situation that the two of them have to have that discussion at the same time. The goals of the Democratic legislature and the Republican governor are different. They go in different directions. So they have to get in a room and they have to discuss these issues.
Representative Jimenez.
A lot of the things that the governor is talking about are things that Republicans in this state have been talking about for a lot of years. When I was on legislative staff, a lot of the reforms and ideas of efficiencies were talked about and battled about. We didn't get much coverage because the Speaker of the House was not interested in those ideas at the time. We have a situation right now where we have a split power. And as Mr. Gray said, we have to find ways to work together. That is the only path forward. When you have a governor from the Republican Party and you have a supermajority Democrat legislature, there is no way that either party is going to get their way. And so you absolutely need to find efficiencies and reforms as part of the path forward. I think anybody who's been an observer of government, all of us living in this community, know that, and I think they accept that as the premise.
Moving to the 95th, we'll begin with Mr. Scobbie. Again, do you agree with how Governor Rauner has handled the budget standoff? Why or why not?
I want to work with the governor in an attempt to move Illinois forward. And I support some of the items in his turnaround agenda. I am particularly interested in the priorities such as term limits, redistricting, and unfunded mandates. I want to see Illinois move forward, and I think these items could bring confidence to the citizens in order to do that. But I think we have to have a balanced budget first and then work from there.
Representative Bourne.
I think it's important to look at whose priority it is to send a budget to the governor. That's the legislature, and the legislative leaders and the governor haven't met since December, and it's not from an unwillingness from the governor or an unwillingness from our side. I think that we have to come to the table. We need to pass a budget. That has to be our number one priority, but it's not true that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. We can both talk about a budget, talk about how we spend money, and talk about how we change the way Illinois does government for the betterment of all Illinois citizens. I think that we're sent to Springfield in order to pass a balanced budget that reflects the priorities of our state, but also we were all sent there to make sure that government's working for everyone in the state, and that includes changing the way we've done government in Illinois.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes, I'm fully supportive of the governor's turnaround agenda. With that being said, though, I do not feel like they are budgetary items. Those are non-budgetary items. I feel like they need to be put up for a vote in both the House and Senate. As far as the way the governor has handled it, a lot of people are not supportive of the way it's been handled, but first and foremost, it's taken us 20 to 30 years to get here. It's going to take us at least half that time to get out of this mess. With that being said, I will stand behind the governor and do whatever I have to do to make sure the state moves forward in a progressive forward direction. Like you said, in terms of specifics on the governor's turnaround agenda, term limits, redistricting, and also lawsuit reform are the three of the major ones that I stand behind and I will support. And I hope we can work with Governor Rauner and both the Democrat Party to move our state forward in a better direction for everyone.
Moving to the 96th, again, the question is, do you agree with how the governor has approached the budget standoff? Why or why not? We'll start with Ms. Deadrick Wolfer.
The governor's turnaround agenda is a roadmap. It's a tool. It's a vision. It has parts and pieces of it within it that talk about term limits, that talk about redistricting, that talk about workman's comp. And all of those areas are effective when we talk about the budget. We need a balanced budget. We need people to work across the aisles. We need everyone to get together in the same room and quit the standoff. We are in a crisis situation. We need people to compromise, work together, and look at a balanced budget.
And finally, Mr. Pierce.
A lot of people don't really understand that what Governor Rauner is trying to do, and not to criticize the media, but you're not really telling everybody what he's trying to do. And basically what he's trying to do is empower us, the citizens. And I support what he's doing in that area with his turnaround agenda. Madigan been in there about 50 years. I can't remember how old I was when he got elected. But I tell you this, there's a lot of corruption going on, and he's getting paid for the things he's doing by the union. And I'm talking about ASME. And he's getting paid. And when you got a person there that long, and then you got all those officials that's been in the union that long, then you're gonna have the crisis that we have. And Governor Rauner is trying to turn that around. He's trying to empower us, the citizen. And that's why I support him.
The next question will start with the 95th District and Representative Avery Bourne. As you've noted, we have increasing unemployment rates, jobs fleeing the state. What are the top 3 steps that the legislature could take to encourage job growth and improve Illinois' business climate?
Sure. When I've spoken with small business owners, there are a few things that come up. One is workers' compensation reform. That's not only one that inhibits our small business owners, but it's one that I think there could be some bipartisan compromise on. Another one that I hear from is actually one that I didn't expect. Everybody just wants certainty. They want to know, will there be a tax increase? Will there not be a tax increase? What will the government spend on this? What will the regulations be? What kind of research and development incentives will there be? What are we looking at with DCEO grants? When government is in turmoil, like it is right now, when we don't have a budget, when we don't have a clear path, everyone suffers, including the job creators and the job seekers. We have some of the highest unemployment in the state in my home county of Montgomery County. We also need to look at making sure we have vocational education in schools. I talk with people who need welders, or they need people to come into their manufacturing businesses, but we need students to know that those jobs are available and to be well prepared for them.
Now, Mr. Hicks,
Yes, could you repeat the question, please?
what top 3 steps can the legislature take to encourage job growth and improve Illinois' business climate?
Yes, I believe overall we need to be a climate that's friendly to businesses first and foremost. And as you see, we do not have that because businesses are leaving our state in a record number. With that being said, I believe we need to have reform in terms of taxes for businesses, have it business friendly. Above that, as it's been mentioned, have training for those people in skills that are needed. And overall, as I mentioned before, just be a business friendly environment. And we need to recruit business, bring it here, and grow our economy. And that has to be done by both parties working together, and we don't have that right now.
And finally, for the 95th District, Mr. Scobbie.
You know, we need to improve the schools, particularly. As a former educator in the high school and on the school board, I hear a lot of employers asking, how come we can't find qualified people? And I constantly ask, well, what are you looking for? And we're looking for people that are not necessarily college-bound students, people to go out and work as an electrician, to work as a carpenter, to work as a welder, as Ms. Bourne had said. And a lot of those programs have been cut. We're not putting people out there that can do those jobs. You know, we've had this big item that we need to send everybody to college for 4 years. And college is great for a lot of people, but not necessarily some individuals. Some individuals can make a fine living at a 2-year university, or they can do some type of apprentice school.
Now to the 96th District, starting with Mr. Pierce. Again, the question, what are the top 3 steps the legislature could take to encourage job growth and improve Illinois' business climate?
Well, the first step would be to get on board with Governor Rauner and some of the reforms he's talking about when it comes to working compensation, the prevailing wage, PLAs. They need to get on board with him because there is a lot of things that need to be reformed. And we also got to make this state friendly again. This is a great state. I love the state of Illinois. I used to brag about Illinois when I left it. You could come here and get a job the same day you get there, but it ain't that way anymore. And the way we can encourage businesses to come back is, like I said before, is that we got to give them incentive. We got to give them incentive. And then Governor Rauner is talking about that as well, giving them incentives. And then in some of these, especially in my district, we need to encourage enterprise zones. You know, that can encourage businesses. So we need to, you know, look at what he's talking about more in depthly than we sit back and being critical. And we got to go across the aisle. The Republicans and Democrats got to work together. But in order to do that, we got to have some balance.
Ms. Deadrick Wolfer?
Thank you. As a small business owner, I spend almost every day talking, meeting, and discussing some of the issues with other business owners. I've had people call me since I announced my candidacy and said, Cindy, I don't know what else to do. I am at my wit's end. I don't know where else to turn. There's no stability. I don't understand why the workman's compensation laws are so difficult. I don't understand the property taxes and the rates that we're looking at. They just don't understand why we don't have a more friendly atmosphere, why we're not encouraging them. They feel neglected, they feel penalized, and they need help. And so the top three things is difficult to say, but I think workman's comp, we need to educate our youth so that we have a workforce, and we definitely need stability, and especially in our tax, property taxes and in insurance taxes.
On to the 99th District, Representative Jimenez. What are the top 3 steps the legislature could take to encourage job growth and also improve Illinois' business climate?
Over the last 3 months, as I've served in this position, I've made it a point to meet with all the different types of people who live in the 99th District and serve here. In talking with the people in the business community, there are 3 things that they talk about. The first thing is how uncompetitive it is with our workman's comp system. Number 2 in the 99th District is the certainty around the budget. There hasn't been certainty around the Illinois budget for years. I mean, this has not been a new problem just in the last year, but for years. And then the last thing is regulatory reform. A lot of the businesses, especially in our community in Sangamon County, deal with the state on a variety of issues. And according to the businesses, it takes far too long to deal with the state on a variety of issues. And we need to work inside our bureaucracy to make those things more efficient and easier to work with for business and the citizens in our area.
And Mr. Gray?
Well, I'd say the top 3 things for businesses that are looking to stay in Illinois or businesses that might even want to move to Illinois. The top 3 are all the same. It's not raise taxes, not raise taxes, not raise taxes. If we raise taxes now, it'll be the final straw that sends a number of business people packing from Illinois. And if we raise taxes now, in comparison with the other states that surround us, we will have businesses that decide Illinois is off the table as a place that I want to expand my business. I think that's the wrong thing to do. Workers' comp and unemployment insurance are 2 issues, and they've been going around. I was a Senate Republican staffer and a House Republican staffer 15 years ago, and we were working on work comp reform and UI reform even back then when I was the staffer for Commerce and Industry. So we've been dealing with these issues for a long time, but again, these are entrenched issues. And then the final issue is, you know, I remember when a certain mayor came into this town, and I had somebody say to me, they said, can you help us get our building permit? It's been 9 months. Now, I wasn't an official with the city. I didn't even live in the city of Springfield. They just wanted my help to get it done because that's how bad things are with regulation in this town.
The next question will shift and focus on labor. We'll start with the 96th District with Ms. Deadrick Wolfer. Should public sector employees have the right to collective bargaining? What, if any, limits would you place on that right? And do you favor or oppose House Bill 580?
It's a difficult question because I believe in the right for everyone to have a job and a good job and be able to take care of their families. But I do believe when I served on the Decatur Park District Board of Commissioners that we ran into some times and some issues when the prevailing wage and the PLAs and some of the things that take place made it difficult for us to complete projects. We need some flexibility. We want to support people that want to work, but we need flexibility in making sure that we can take care of projects and get them completed. within a reasonable cost and a reasonable amount of time.
Mr. Pierce.
Can you repeat the question?
Question was, should public sector employees have the right to collective bargaining? What, if any, limits would you place on that right? And do you favor or oppose House Bill 580?
Well, Governor Rauner is, once again, when you talk about collective bargaining, it's gotten out of control. It needs some reform. I've even stated that I would look at if there's a way to do it with the legislators to change, would ask me, I'm talking about ask me, then I would do something about that. But as one of the things I think the governor is trying to do is once again place that ball in the citizens' court. So when you talk about making it a local decision, you know, putting it on as a referendum, having us vote on it, whether or not if we want our local municipality people, workers, collective bargaining, or our teachers or whatever, that's a local issue. Because when it comes down to it, we're the ones paying them. So when it comes to that, I support everything on that when it comes to him, when it comes to prevailing wage, PLAs, everything that's gonna make it change to make it easier for us as a citizen.
Moving to the 99th District, Mr. Gray.
In the 18 years that I've been on the Lincoln Land Community College Board, we have about 6 bargaining units. We've had multiple bargaining sessions over the years. We've never had a strike. We've always come to a compromise at the end that benefits the taxpayers. And that's what the trustees are there to protect. The union is there to protect their own members, and rightfully so. I think there is a right in Illinois for collective bargaining. It's a long-held right under Illinois law. But you've got to have willing partners that sit down and discuss these issues. I think it's important for the governor and the folks that are in the union bargaining folks in the different areas of state government to get together and bring some of these issues to a close. I'm not ready to support a change in collective bargaining because, to be honest, I think the system as it stands is generally drafted slightly in favor of the unions. But I would be open to, if there's not some progress, in other words, the parties have to make some progress over the next few months. And I would be open to reevaluating whether there needs to be other tools in the toolbox to bring these issues to a close.
Representative Jimenez.
I believe in the collective bargaining process. When I served on the Park District Board, we had several contracts come before us as trustees. Again, it's a process that, when it works, is a good process. You have the management and the workers trying to come to an agreement going forward. I think in Illinois we have an issue. We are in crisis. Our state is in crisis. We are in the middle of a budget issue, and I think that it's very important for everyone who has a seat at the table, whether it's the state workers or the providers who serve our most vulnerable, the educators, the higher ed education. Everyone has a seat at the table, and we have to work together, once again, to come up with compromise for the path forward.
We'll move now to the 95th District. We'll start with Mr. Hicks. The question again, should public sector employees have the right to collective bargaining? What, if any, limits would you place on that right, and do you favor or oppose House Bill 580?
Yes, first and foremost, with House Bill 580, I would not stand behind it. I don't believe it's a good bill. Moving forward to collective bargaining, I do stand behind collective bargaining, but as you mentioned, there should be some restrictions on it. And in terms of that, I would work with other legislators to see what's appropriate and what they think is appropriate as well, because we're all in it together. Moving forward, though, like I said, collective bargaining, we should stand behind that. And I just would work with other legislators to make sure that the restrictions we put on are appropriate, but also I wanted to make sure we have job growth and economic growth so everyone can prosper and be successful in our state. And not only our state, but my district as well.
Mr. Scobbie.
I do not support changes to the collective bargaining law. As a 40-year experienced teacher and a member of the school board in Litchfield, I have been on both sides of the table. I've been on the side of the table as a teacher, and I've been on the side of the table as a school board member. I have always been able to bring people together to work on solutions, to negotiate fair contracts, to balance budgets. You know, I don't think the law is the problem. I think it's the people that are more the problem. And that's my experience. You know, when you get bogged down, it's usually a person that has got the system bogged down, not necessarily the law. So I do not support changes to the collective bargaining law.
Representative Bourne.
I support collective bargaining rights, and also I've spoken with many state workers in my district, and we've spoken about House Bill 580. So first off, let me say there are a lot of misconceptions about what this bill did and didn't do, and I voted no for a couple of reasons. When I was speaking with constituents before, they were talking about their goals were to avoid a strike and to avoid a lockout. Both of those were accomplished by the indefinite tolling agreement signed by both sides, and that laid out a process by which they could negotiate fairly. And this is not an unprecedented length of time for budget or for contract negotiations to go. So I've spoken with state workers, many of them, once we talk about the bill, they agree the legislature should stay out of the negotiations. It needs to be between both parties. It needs to be fair negotiations, and that's why I voted no on House Bill 580, because it put the legislature at the table, and it took away some of that kind of inherent negotiation that happens at the table between what is now the administration and the union.
Thank you, candidates. This is News Talk 970 WMAY Springfield, live coverage of a candidates forum in the GOP primaries in the 95th, 96th, and 99th House districts. Our next question will begin in the 99th district, and we'll start with Representative Jimenez. What changes would you make to Illinois' tax structure? Would you support a sales tax on services, a progressive income tax, a surcharge on millionaires, or some other change? Representative?
Thanks, Jim. I think, as I had stated before, we must look at this budget process from where we can cut, make more efficiencies and reforms. Those are the places where you have to cut. When you are in your own household, you have to look, you don't have the luxury of just asking other people for more revenue right out of the box. You have to look within your own household, your own bureaucracy, the programs that you provide, and you have to figure out how much money do we have currently to spend. And that's where you start. And after you exhaust all of those possibilities, you move through the legislative agenda, the reforms, the cuts, the efficiencies, and what we can get passed together as Democrats and Republicans in the House. Then we move forward to looking at revenue options.
Ken Gray?
20 years ago, when I was working in Congress for Leader Michael at the Capitol, one of the things that one of then Newt Gingrich, who was moving up the pecking order at that point, and Dick Armey were pushing, was a flat tax. And the interesting thing about Illinois is, I think a lot of people don't realize it, is Illinois has a flat tax. We have a very simple and easy to understand income tax system. One that maybe not can be filled out on the back of a postcard, but essentially is filled out on the back of one page of paper with some instructions on the other side. I think Illinois actually has a pretty good tax structure. What we have is a major spending problem, and we have had it for a long time. One of the problems with Illinois is we don't tax all that much compared to some other large urban states, but we spend just as much as they do. And we've lied to the taxpayers for many, many years by saying that our budgets are in balance when they're not. So I think we ought to keep the system that we're at now, not increase taxes, and look at getting a hold on the revenue issues so that the people of Illinois know that they're getting good value for their tax dollars.
The question is again about the discussion on possible changes to Illinois' tax structure. To the 95th, Dennis Scobbie, would you support any of the following: sales tax on services, progressive income tax, a surcharge on millionaires, or some other change to the tax structure?
I'm opposed to increasing the state income tax, and I do not support other fees or taxes on the hardworking people of the 95th District. Likewise, I would like to hear more about the property tax freeze. A lot of the people in our particular communities are worried about getting taxed out of their homes. I would be in favor of a property tax freeze, provided at the same time our schools are funded. When you have a property tax freeze, that's where a lot of our local money comes from. So if we have something like that, we have to look at the other side of it. Where will that money come from in order to be able to balance the budgets for the schools? We need to help the homeowners, we need to help the students and the schools with the resources they have.
Representative Avery Bourne?
I think it's entirely irresponsible to ask people for more of their hard-earned money in taxes before we show them that we are willing to change the way we spend money in Springfield. That being said, I also think that there is a huge appetite for a property tax freeze. I talk with people all of the time who, our property taxes are the highest in the nation. And so we need to look at how we spend our money and how we're making local governments and schools rely on property tax revenue for their funding. But I think overall, yes, it's a spending problem that we have, and until we tackle that, we should not even begin. As Speaker Madigan famously said, the starting point of increasing taxes, that's entirely the wrong perspective to take.
Christopher Hicks.
Yes. First and foremost, as I said earlier this evening, I'm against any and all tax increases, and I will oppose any and all tax increases. With that being said, I am in support of freezing local property taxes, but also at the same time, we have to make sure that our districts and our constituents are able to move forward in a progressive direction. I will not support any tax increases until any and all measures have been exhausted and looked at. With that being said, no one ever wants to pay more taxes, and I'm just not in favor of it.
And to the 96th, again, the question is about any possible changes in Illinois' tax structure. That question would go first to Gary Pierce.
I really think it's unfair to tax someone because they're rich. So I definitely wouldn't want to do that. I think most rich people that I know, now I can't speak for all of them, but the ones I do know, they give back to the community anyway in a lot of different ways. Being a minister, I have had people help my ministry out. Not a lot of money though, okay, so I don't want to get nobody in trouble or get myself in trouble. But anyway, taxes has to be fair some kind of way. We have to look at some way to make it fair. Now, I do believe that with property taxes or fuel taxes locally, that should be determined by the citizens. Once again, and I believe that's what the reforms that Governor Rauner is trying to make it more in our hand, in the citizens' hand, to make those decisions. And that's what we need to do. Now, as far as with state decisions, that's up to the legislators. And we have to come up with ways to find out where that money's going. And I'm telling you right now, we need some audits. That's what we need to do.
Cindy Deadrick Wolfer.
Thank you. There's just no way that we can increase the tax system that we have and continue in the way that we do. Taxes are important and taxes are necessary, but a small business climate, a friendly business climate is what we need so that we can grow our revenue. It doesn't make sense to keep taxing the same people over and over and over with more and more and more when we have other options. We have to stop our spending that we're doing right now. It's just too much. We need to look at reform. And the businesses, I own a small business, and I can't just ask for an increase without looking at other things too. I have to take care of myself, I have to take care of my employees, and the way I do that is to grow the business, not to necessarily just increase the tax or the sale for every person.
Our next question, we will begin with the 95th District, starting with Representative Bourne. Under what circumstances is it acceptable for an elected representative to vote present rather than yes or no? Please describe.
Sure. At the beginning of this session, we've seen for years Speaker Madigan calls bills to the floor that are never intended to pass. And this has happened time after time after time again, even in my short year in the legislature. And we decided as a caucus that if that happened, if Speaker Madigan called a bill to vote, that either it was an amendment that would never be intended to pass, or a bill where the sponsor of the bill itself said, please don't support this bill, they didn't support the bill, on the property tax freeze and some others, that we were not participating in that political gamesmanship that's happened for years and has really taken Illinois into a place where politics comes before policy way too often. So we said we will not support and we will not participate in these games. And so I have voted present on bills where it was either not intended to pass, it was not a negotiated bill, it was a way to gain political points, and it wasn't directed at good compromised policies that would move the state forward.
Mr. Hicks.
Yes, with that being said, I have criticized Ms. Bourne for doing so. With that being said, though, she's made it very clear why she's done that, and I will not engage that question and throw my opponent under the bus this evening. She's shown that she's willing to stand up for her constituents, and she's explained her reason why. And I think that shows first and foremost, and like I said, I'm not gonna throw my opponent under the bus, so I will not engage that question.
Mr. Scobbie.
On the school board, when we have very tough decisions to make, I have never voted present, and I don't feel I ever will vote present. I feel like it's the job of an elected official to represent the people that have elected him or her. I just think you have to understand where the people are coming from. You have to get out and talk to them. You have to represent them. And to me, voting present is the coward's way out.
Moving to the 96th, the question again, under what circumstances is it acceptable for an elected representative to vote present rather than yes or no? We'll begin with Cindy Deadrick Wolfer.
Well, like you, when I served on the Decatur Park District, I never voted present. I always took a stand one way or another. And I believe it is the responsibility of our delegates and our representatives to make sure that they understand the issues and that they are able to make a decision one way or another. They need to compromise and talk together, but it would be difficult for me to vote present very often.
Mr. Pierce.
If you're voting present because you don't have enough information on what's being discussed, or if you're voting present because you didn't get enough information for your constituents, and if you're doing your job as a state representative, you would have all the information in place before you have to vote. So I would not be the type of legislator that would not come to the floor without having enough knowledge, not only from what we're talking about and what we're discussing, but also from my constituents, how they want me to vote. And if I got a balance between the two, one want to go this way, 50% want to go that way, 50% want to go that way, then guess what? I would have to make a decision, and that's what I would do.
Moving to the 99th district, again, the question is, under what circumstances is it acceptable for an elected representative to vote present rather than yes or no? We'll start with Kent Gray.
Well, from my point of view, and I think it's, our most famous present voter in Illinois history was Barack Obama, who loved to vote present on things that were too tough for him to handle. And I was on Senate Republican staff when that used to happen. And to be honest, he was a pretty good debater. He would debate, and Kurt Diller would debate him, and then he'd sit there and vote present. And it was frankly kind of a laughing stock back in the day when I worked in House or Senate Republican staff. I think other than a direct conflict of interest, I don't think you need to vote present. You can probably tape that button over on your council and just vote yes or no. When I was on staff, we generally did structured roll calls where the caucuses voted yes or no depending on what the issue was. We didn't have a lot of present voters on the Republican side. We generally voted, our members generally voted things up or down.
Representative Jimenez.
I think that obviously, as a lot of the candidates had stated, the best vote is to take a position, up or down on an issue, to vote yes or no as it comes to you. I think that there would be very rare occasion where you might have to vote present. One of the things that I've observed just in my in the last 3 months as state representative and also on staff just a few years ago is that the Speaker of the House tends to put up some of these items for a vote that are not realistic. There isn't a reason why, and there is not an intention for it to pass. And so I think that that is a challenge for members on both sides of the aisle, actually, when those types of games are being played. But at the end of the day, I think that it's best, whenever possible, to vote yes or no.
The next question, it concerns benefits for state representatives. Starting with the 96th district, Mr. Pierce, would you personally take a legislative pension and health insurance if you are elected, yes or no? Also, should lawmakers get a pension and health insurance at all, or what changes would you make to legislative pensions and benefits?
First of all, I wouldn't need to take the health benefits, okay? And if they're offering any type of benefits, if those legislators do not have jobs, then of course they're gonna need health benefits. And then those who are trying to save for their retirement or get to their retirement, of course they're gonna need, everybody wanna have a nice retirement, but my retirement that I'm focusing on is out of this world. So I'm not too much focused about those type of things right now. What I'm thinking about more than anything is basically getting in that legislature and helping the Republican Party get a balance and helping our governor move forward, move this state forward.
Ms. Deadrick Wolfer?
You know, serving in the legislature is not an easy task. In fact, it seems like it's more and more difficult as I sit up here and listen to what's going on and learn more and more. I haven't decided, quite honestly, about insurance or a pension. I do have some dollars put aside in an IRA, which I have worked very hard to accrue as a small business person. But I also believe that people that work hard and spend time and do a good job do deserve some of the benefits of being a hired employee. So quite honestly, I have not made that decision.
On to the 99th District, Representative Jimenez.
I have not taken the General Assembly pension, and however, I am taking the health insurance benefit.
Any changes you think need to be made to the benefits?
I think that with the health insurance benefit in particular, that is something that is being negotiated right now as part of the contract between state workers and the administration. Any changes to that benefit will affect legislators and state workers and going forward. In terms of the pension system, I was a state worker and I participated in the SERS program. I was not a state worker for long enough to be vested in the system, but I think, as we all know, we need to work together on solutions for the pension system because it is the worst funded pension system in the United States.
Mr. Kent Gray?
Well, the reality is that our state legislature is one of the highest paid legislatures in the country. It's a part-time job and a job that, frankly, almost no one over under that dome does a very good job at doing. And so tonight you've got the opportunity to look at people who might replace 3 districts, but to be honest, we probably wouldn't be heard if we replaced all 118 districts. I have a couple things that I've looked at in this. First of all, I'm gonna propose and take a pledge that I will not take a salary for any year that the state of Illinois does not have a budget in place. I think generally if they can't get their work done over there and if I'm part of that crew, I'll just skip the salary. I'm in a better financial position than most people give me credit for, so I'm able to do that. The other thing that I did this last week at the SJR editorial board is I took a 4-term, 8-year term limit pledge to serve in the House of Representatives. I think, as I said to the editorial board at that time, anybody who thinks they're indispensable is probably dispensable. And I think there's a lot of people in this town that could do this job very, very well, and I would hope to get your vote to do it for 8 years.
On to the 95th District, Christopher Hicks.
Yes, first and foremost, I'm only going to take a salary. I do not want a pension. I don't want any of the other benefits, per diem, anything else that comes with it. With that being said, the salary is $68,000 a year, roughly. That's way too much for, as Mr. Gray indicated, a part-time job. We can't even pass a budget. So, first and foremost, like I said, I'm only taking a salary. We do need to make some changes to that as well. Like I said, the salary at $68,000 a year is way too high for a part-time job. Most people on average don't even make that in our state. That's not even the median average income. We need to move forward. We need to eliminate all extra benefits other than a salary for our state representatives and our elected officials as well. I hope that everyone understands that I'm not here to get rich. I'm here to do the people's work, roll up my sleeves, and represent them in Springfield and bring some of those common sense ideas to Springfield. We, as state representatives and at least candidates, should serve as a liaison between our people. Thank you.
Mr. Scobbie.
I've been asked this question a number of times, and the answer is the same every time. No, I would not take a pension. No, I would not take health insurance. As far as the salary goes, you know, as I've been involved in this, many people have donated to my campaign, and I've been most impressed by that. And I had thought about this, you know, other than basically expenses, for the most part, any money that I would make, I would probably donate to various groups and organizations that need help.
And finally, Representative Bourne.
being in the legislature was never intended to be a career or a place where you earn another pension. And so I'm not taking the pension, and as I stated earlier, I think we should phase out legislative pensions. I think that not only gets people in there who don't want to stay as long, but I think that it shows the people of Illinois that we're committed to changing the way we do government. So I think we need to phase out the legislative pension, and I will not be taking it.
Our next question has to do with experience. We will start with the 99th District. What role should life experience, professional experience, or a fresh perspective play in your race? We'll start with Kent Gray.
Well, you know, I've been blessed to grow up in this town. I've had a kind of a varied career in my life. For a while, for a short period of time, I was a photojournalist. I worked in a camera store here in downtown Springfield. I moved on and got 2 business degrees, my master's and my bachelor's. Ended up getting a law degree. I've worked in Congress. I've worked in the House and Senate Republican staffs here in Illinois. I've worked for the state comptroller in the executive branch. I worked for Bob Michel out in Washington, D.C. in Congress. I've worked for 7 presidential campaigns leading up to the Donald Trump campaign this particular year, and I've learned many life lessons from all those campaigns. The first of which is don't drop your candidate off a stage in Chico, California. And the second one is that Mr. Trump speaks for Mr. Trump. And so I bring a lot to that. I also bring 18 years as an elected official, also as chairman and vice chairman of the Lincoln Land Community College Board, some years nearly an $85 million budget. That's a significant history of collective bargaining and policy decisions that I think would be well served to the people at the state capitol.
Representative Jimenez.
Can you repeat the question
Sure. The
again?
question was, what role should life experience, professional experience, or a fresh perspective play in your race?
I think that all of those things should come into play during this moment in time. Again, the state is in crisis. I think that having my experience as a journalist, I was able to look at a lot of different issues from many different angles. And in fact, my beat for several years was covering the state government down at the State House. I also have worked inside state government in recent years, where a lot of people talk about the good old days. I haven't seen the good old days in my entire professional career as a journalist and as a state worker. I also think that I provide, even though I've had that life experience, I still feel like I can provide a fresh perspective. I have a young family who I am going to raise, and I plan to stay in this town. I think we can do better in our community and in our state, and that's why I've gotten involved.
We'll move to the 95th District and start with Mr. Scobbie. What role should life experience, professional experience, or a fresh perspective play in your race?
I think in the 95th District, life experiences is the main part of this race. We're looking at individuals in this particular situation that have had more life experience, others that have much less life experience. I have had 40 years of life experience as a teacher and as a coach. I have worked at both the high school level and the college level. I asked this question, think about this for a minute. If you were going to go to the doctor and you're going to have surgery, who do you want to do your surgery? Do you want the young doctor right out of college, or do you want the doctor that's done it for 30 or 40 years? If you're playing in a baseball game and the Cardinals are playing the Cubs, and it's the game on the line, who do you want pitching? You want Jake Arrieta pitching for the Cubs and Adam Wainwright pitching for the Cardinals. You want the best person you can get there. Who do you want to teach your kids? You want the most experienced teacher you can get. Sure, you're going to have younger teachers, and they're good. I'm not taking anything away from them. But a teacher that's taught for 30 or 35 years is going to be much better. So life experience is the most important.
Representative Bourne, you're next.
Thank you. It's not a secret that I'm young, but I think we've sent the same kind of people to Springfield with so-called experience for years, and look what it's gotten us. We've gotten tired policies, and we've gotten status quo that doesn't change. We need to have fresh perspectives and new ideas in Springfield. And I, right out of high school, knew this is what we needed to do. We needed to change this. And so I have dedicated hours of volunteer time, of service, and working for people to make sure that Illinois and this nation are places where we're proud to live in 40 years. My generation is the one that's deciding whether we're going to buy a house in Illinois and build our roots here, the ones looking for jobs, the ones who will be impacted by these policies for years and years to come, and the ones who will end up paying for all of this in the end, where maybe it will be our children or grandchildren. If we don't jump in now, I don't know where this state will be in 20 years. That's why I couldn't wait, and I think that's why all of the voters that I talked to in the 95th District say we clearly need to try something new.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes. With that being said, I myself am young. I'm under 30 as well. With that being said, though, I don't really feel like life experience or that thereof should play that important of a role. We should listen to all the candidates, see what they're about, see what they represent, and see if ultimately we agree with them and that we want to stand behind them. At the end of the day, I feel like whoever's the best candidate and wants to represent their constituents the best is a person you should stand behind, whoever that may be, even if it's not myself. I believe that we do need fresh perspectives here in Springfield and all throughout the state of Illinois. For far too long, we've had career politicians that have ran our country, our state, right into the ground. They care nothing more about their next election, and I'm glad that we have fresh perspectives such as Representative Bourne and a few others in our legislature, and people like myself wanting to run.
We'll move to the 96th district and start with Ms. Deadrick Wolfer. What role should life experience, professional experience, or a fresh perspective play in your race?
All three of those are a big part of my race. Life experience, I have a large business background. I have been involved in my community in many, many areas. I brought people together. I can work across all kinds of divides and lines, and it's just something that is important. The business perspective is important, the community perspective is important, the fresh perspective is important. And for those of you that said that this was a part-time job a few minutes ago, I disagree with that. To do this correctly, this is a full-time job. You may not have 40 hours a week, 52 hours a year, but it's certainly not a part-time job. We need to have legislators that are involved and are part of the solution and working every single day.
Mr. Pierce?
I have an associate degree in political science. I have a master's degree in human services. I'm also a licensed ordained minister. That in itself shows my compassion for humanity. I grew up in a single parent home. I know what it's like to grow up poor. I've been fortunate and blessed by God to be able to take care of my family. We all intact. I've only been married once. I believe the training that I've received as far as when it comes to leadership, I received leadership training a couple years ago. That made me open up a little bit more. That made me be able to talk to other people better. I've also was a partnership specialist for the 2010 census. That made me be able to get into the communities that I will be serving. I was able to get a complete count in the hard-to-count areas. So I know how to build partnerships with everybody. And I was focusing on those hard-to-count areas. That's the same thing I would do in my district, focus on those issues that are more important.
Again, our forum this evening is jointly sponsored by the State Journal Register, News Talk 970, WMAY, and ABC News Channel 20. Our next question will begin with the candidates in the 95th House District. A lot of talk this election cycle about the influence of Speaker Madigan on the members of his caucus. Also, Political Action Committee supported by or linked to Governor Rauner and his supporters are playing a major role in this year's election cycle. Several of you have benefited already or may benefit in the fall from that support. What is your biggest area of disagreement with Governor Rauner, and would you be able to disagree with him politically if you have received or do receive such support? We'll start with Representative Avery Bourne.
Thank you. Yeah, there are areas where I agree with the governor and areas where I disagree with the governor. I think one of the most timely disagreements that just popped up the other day is agriculture education has been defunded in the budget yet again. We have FFA students coming up to Springfield tomorrow, and that will certainly be something that they're concerned about. Also here in Springfield, something locally, I am a supporter of the State Museum, voted to keep that open against what the governor wanted, and I think that shows that when you're able to step out and have some differences, he came back with an amendatory veto with a compromise of, okay, we can keep this open, let's work on how we can solve that. I'm also 100% pro-life and think that we should talk about social issues, and that's something that I'm proud to support as well.
That same question now to Christopher Hicks.
Yes, could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, what is your biggest area of disagreement with Governor Rauner, and could you disagree with him politically if you receive financial support from him directly or indirectly?
First and foremost, if it's not in the best interest of my constituents, I have no problem standing against the governor, no problem whatsoever. If I receive support from the governor, that's great, but ultimately that will not persuade my opinion either way. If you donate to me, that's great. If not, I don't really care. With the governor, I believe I will stand behind him 100%, especially if it's in the best interest of my constituents. And I just feel that we all need to work together to move our state forward, both Democrats and Republicans, regardless of where you stand, whether you're with the governor or not. It's your constituents that you serve, and that's what we need to put first and foremost.
Dennis Scobbie?
I disagree with the governor in one thing right now that particularly I see impacting our students, and that is the lack of funding in MAP grants. As a instructor at Lincoln Land Community College, last semester I had in my 2 classes 48 students. This particular semester I have 20 students. Where are they going? What do I hear? I hear the fact that they are having to pay back their loans from their MAP grants. These are folks that have either lost their jobs, been laid off. They're young mothers that are coming back to school trying to get an education. And the state of Illinois is not going to get anywhere if we keep preventing our young people from obtaining an education in order to get a better job. I have never had a problem with telling somebody no if I disagree with them. You know, as a teacher, I've told a lot of students no, and that has happened frequently. But you know, a lot of times they come back years later and they say, you know, Mr. Scobbie, you were right. I understand now.
To the candidates in the 96th, again, what is your biggest area of disagreement with Governor Rauner, and would you be able to disagree with him politically if you receive financial support from him? To Gary Pierce.
Well, my biggest disagreement with him right now is the fact that he won't talk to me. You know, I've seen him in places, and I've talked to the lieutenant governor, and he wouldn't even talk to me. He shook my hand. I love high school basketball. I've seen him at high school basketball games. He won't even wave at me. And I know he know who I am. I mean, he should know who I am. He should know I'm running for the 96th district. You know, so I'm trying to wonder whether or not, do he see me? But at the same time, there's nothing else I can disagree with him on. And I think if he got to know me, once again, he would like me, and I think we can work together for the betterment of all the communities of the state of Illinois, all the communities. And I think he's shown that he's trying to do that with the minority entrepreneurship program that he's trying to put in place to allow for those people to go out and be able to get the, he's not talking about giving them money. He's talking about opening up the door and letting them in to talk to the right people that can help them with their businesses. And that's, I think me and him, in a lot of, not only that, but in a lot of ways, we can get along.
Cindy Deadrick Wolfer.
Thank you. Once again, the governor's turnaround agenda is a roadmap. It's a tool. It's a vision. And there are lots of things in there that I can support. The one concern I have, and Representative Bourne just brought it up, is some of the things that have been done with the closing of museums and the whole tourism industry. Tourism is a multi-million-dollar industry. And when you do things like that, when you close facilities, it keeps those dollars from coming into our communities. And so I think that those, you have to look at those not in the short term of how much money can be saved in the short term, but in the long term of what it brings into a community.
Again, the question, your biggest area of disagreement with Governor Rauner, and can you disagree with him politically if you're receiving support from him in the 99th, Representative Jimenez.
Thanks, Jim. I think as Republicans, we will agree, the governor is a Republican, we will agree on many, many items as we go forward. There will be areas of disagreement, of course, in the district. I think that as we work forward, path toward compromise, it's my hope that as it's going to have to start in the legislature. And so part of what I've been doing is working with my colleagues on our side of the aisle, having conversations with folks on the other side of the aisle to see what things we can move forward. And I think we've got to do cuts, efficiencies, and reforms. I know that the governor has, in his turnaround agenda, has listed a lot of different things, at different periods of time in the last year. But I think that moving forward, if the legislature can come up with compromises on these items, I hope that we can move forward and have that be part of the budget solution.
And Kent Gray.
Well, you know, I make no bones about it. I voted for Governor Rauner, and I went to his inaugural. I was a big supporter of his. I raised money for him last summer here in Springfield, and I think he brought a lot of promise to Illinois to try to fix a lot of the problems that have existed for far too long. And I do think that at the end of the day, it's not Bruce Rauner that's caused any of these problems over the years. He's only recently here in the last 9 months. I am disappointed to some extent that they have not spent more time at the table together trying to hash out these issues. I think I might differ a little bit with how they are actually negotiating, because I think they need to be negotiating more. But the reality is, the nice thing about this particular race is I'm completely independent of any of those issues. I don't have to work for Chicago politicians on the Democratic side. I don't have to work for the unions. I don't have to work for lobbyists. I don't have to work for business groups. And most importantly, I don't work for Governor Rauner. I work for the citizens of the 99th District, the same folks that I've represented for 18 years. And I can do that because Governor Rauner hasn't given me $200,000 in campaign contributions for this particular race. So I'm proud to say that I haven't spent as much, but I am independent.
Representative, under the rules, you have an opportunity to rebut. There was a direct reference to you in that answer, so you can have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Sure. So I've had, over the last few months, lots of support from the state Republican Party to the local Republican Party to many of the high-profile Republicans, elected officials and otherwise, to the people that I meet at the door. I've been walking door to door several days a week all around the district, meeting with Republicans, and have gained a lot of support. And it's whether I'm very grateful to have everyone's support, and I'm thankful for that.
Time is up. Thank you.
We'll turn to education for the next question, which will go initially to the 96th district candidates, beginning with Ms. Deadrick Wolfer. Much of the debate in the school funding formula reform discussion has centered around whether funding can be made more equitable without some districts having to lose money because it's being redistributed to other areas. Do you think that's feasible, or would the state have to raise money spent on education overall in order to reform school funding?
Well, I think the school funding formula definitely needs to be revamped. It doesn't seem appropriate that students that are in some of the more poverty areas are hurt because of the state funding and the formula that's in place. I don't think that we can, again, raise more money until we look at additional cuts and reforms. And so I think the formula needs to be redone, and we need to look at the dollars that we have right now and try to redistribute them in a more fair and equitable way.
Mr. Pierce.
I got a soft spot for educators, and teachers. My wife's a teacher. She's a special ed teacher at Southeast High School. I went to a meeting in Taylorville, and I talked to the principals over there, and I saw it was a meeting about making cuts in education. I will work hard to make sure that every district in the state is getting the proper funds that they need to operate. I will support SB 1, Andy Menard, who is my senator for my district, and I will work with anyone that's in that with Andy Menard in that area, Avery Bourne, whichever one of them may be the one that win, and even with one of these two, to make sure that our educators are being compensated the way they should be. All of us in this room would not be who we are today if it wasn't for educators. Now, why are they getting the stiff? If anything, they should be making the money. That's the way I look at it. So, I've always have a soft spot when it comes to education. I'll leave it at that.
To the 99th, Mr. Gray.
Education's a tough situation this year because we have K through 12 getting more money than it got last year, and we have higher ed and community colleges getting zero. So $2 billion has been cut out of the budget for universities, community colleges, and MAP grants, leaving just about everybody in the lurch. We will probably have community colleges that close this particular year because they get more than 50% of their funding from state government. Luckily, at Lincoln Land, we only get about 7% of our funding at state government. But this is not a new thing. I actually stood with a representative of Governor Blagojevich's administration when I was chairman of Lincoln Land and got one of those big cardboard checks for about $390,000 once to increase our footprint in Taylorville. And as they say, that check bounced because the $390,000 never showed up. So the state's been doing this for a long time. I think we need to realize that K through 12 can't have a hold harmless on it. It's a large part of the budget. Maybe K through 12 has to have a 1.5–2% cut every year as we glide path into our true revenues. But we need to look at education and make sure that it's even between K through 12 and the higher ed system.
Representative Jimenez.
Education reform has been a topic of conversation for decades. I think it was the late 1990s when the formula was looked at and changed. We absolutely have to look at that. I think that there has been a lot of work done in that area among our legislators in our general vicinity. You have an issue in Illinois where if you live in a rural district, you spend much less per child than you do in a suburban district. I believe that in our public education system, every child should have access to a high quality education. I think that in the districts where they spend quite a bit less on the students, they're doing the best they can right now, but it is our responsibility to reform the system, and I'm willing to work with fellow legislators in the House and the Senate to get that done before we put any more money into a broken system.
Turning now to the 95th, again, the question is how you would approach the discussion of school funding formula reform. We'll start with Mr. Hicks.
Yes, I believe that the education community and taxpayers should demand a more strategic approach that links best practices and evidence-based approaches to education funding mechanisms. With that being said, we need to put education at the forefront of issues. Instead of just measuring up to the standards in Illinois, we should be setting the standards not only for our state, but possibly for the rest of the country to model after. I do believe, though, that, like I said, everyone has the right to a quality education. There should be no one left behind, especially a child. Education is not only needed to move forward, but it's needed to progress financially and prosper and be successful. With that being said, I will stand behind education as much as I can and do whatever I can to ensure that all children and people who want an education get that in not only my district, but throughout the state of Illinois.
Mr. Scobbie.
Having spent 40 years in the classroom and continuing to teach, I know how the school funding formula works firsthand. I've seen the budget cuts. I've seen the schools close. I've seen class sizes increase. I've seen teachers laid off. I've seen programs eliminated. We need changes. We need a formula that's not reliant on property taxes, that doesn't harm the students in rural communities. Every one of our schools in the 95th district is harmed by the current system. We need a conversation on what it takes to give students quality education, to prepare them for the workforce or college. Over the last couple of years, Senator Bernard and other legislators have been reviewing a funding formula, and I want to be part of that discussion in Springfield. I bring 40 years of education experience to the table, and I can give a clear perspective to the politicians in terms of what I have experienced.
Finally, Representative Bourne.
Thank you. We have the worst funded schools in the nation. We also have a 20-year-old school funding formula that's in dire need of being fixed. I saw firsthand in my community growing up a small school that was negatively impacted by our school funding formula. That was 10 years into the formula. We're now 20 years into the formula, and we still haven't changed it. As has been mentioned, small rural districts are harmed by this. That's why this is an issue that I've talked with people in the district. We formed an education advisory board to talk about how do we reform education so every student in Illinois, regardless of where they go to school, gets the same educational opportunities to go out and do whatever they aspire to do. That's also why I asked, there were no downstate Republicans on the education funding task force that was put together in the House. And I said, we need to have a voice on there. So it's been an honor to serve on that committee. We meet again this week. The Senate has talked about school funding reform and the dire need that our schools are in. The governor has said that he's willing to come to the table and talk about how we fund students' education. It's time for the House to take up that conversation, and I'm proud to be one of them to do that.
This will be the last question before closing statements. We'll start with the 99th District, Representative Jimenez. How will you weigh the will of your constituents with what you think is best for the state as a whole?
I think the will of the constituents, that is my job, to be the representative of the constituents in the district. The 99th District is contained within Sangamon County entirely. We've got the urban area of sort of the west and south side of Springfield, but we have many rural communities as well. As I've been visiting with folks all over the district over the last few months, I think that the priority that rises to the top is certainty. There's a lot of reliance on state government. It's something that is a big player in the economy. However, there are a lot of other players in the economy and residents who work for hospitals and on the farmland, and there are a lot of interests, and we are in crisis, and I think the key to moving forward is working together.
Mr. Gray?
The 99th district is a fantastic district. It's about 12 miles wide and about 17 miles long. It's compact, it's contiguous. It's probably the least gerrymandered district in the entire state of Illinois. It also happens to be incredibly Republican. And it has a lot of folks that work in state government, and they need to have their voice heard in the process, because this is an unusual area because of the high amount of state workers that live here. And I think it's incumbent on the representative of this area to represent them as best they can with what they need. I do think Illinois has to make some changes that would better Illinois in general. And those changes, a lot of which frankly are in the governor's turnaround agenda, can be adopted along with a better, more livable budget for our constituents. And I think if we can balance those issues as a representative for the district, this is a representative democracy, it's not a direct democracy. That's a tough job to have. And we have to give a lot of credit to Representative Poe over the years that he was able to balance those issues for 21 years. It's not always easy, but it's a great district to have the chance to represent.
On to the 95th district. Mr. Scobbie, how would you weigh the will of your constituents with what you think is best for the state as a whole?
The job of the state representative of their district is to represent their people. And you have to get out and talk to those folks. And when you talk to those folks, you're going to hear what it is they're concerned about. For example, I hear a lot about the amount of money that's being spent in this particular race in our particular district, especially money coming from PACs from the area of Chicago. Many times voters don't know who's contributing to these PACs, and we need transparency to, number one, who is contributing to these PACs, and number two, why are they contributing to these PACs when they have no vote in this particular district? And I think that's what's happening. We're getting other areas of the state trying to control certain districts. We can't have that. We have to represent the district that we are representing.
Representative Bourne.
What is best for the state is to finally have representatives in Springfield who are well connected to the people and who are able to be their strong voice in Springfield. That's one of the advantages that all of us on this at this panel have, is we all live really close to Springfield, so we have the opportunity I have the opportunity to be in Springfield and then to go back after session and speak with my constituents. And that's what I get to do every day, and it's such an incredible privilege to bring their stories, to bring their experiences, and to bring their concerns to Springfield, and then also to get to take what's going on in Springfield and relay it back to them. And that's why I've put together advisory boards. That's why I go to all of these pancake breakfasts, lunches, and I try to meet with as many people as possible so that I know exactly what they're going through, exactly what their concerns are, and can be a really effective voice for them up here in Springfield.
Christopher Hicks.
Yes. First and foremost, I will always put my constituents' concerns at the front of the table. We are here to serve as liaisons between our people and their ideas up here in Springfield. With that being said, it's been mentioned that Chicago is backing some of us. Am I getting a PAC from Chicago backing me? Yes. But with that being said, all of us are receiving money. $54,000, $250,000. It means no difference. We're here to serve the people of the 95th district. That's what needs to be put at the forefront of issues. Who's giving us money? It's great when people stand behind us, but none of us can sit here and criticize each other because we're all getting money from Chicago.
On to the 96th district, Mr. Pierce.
I'm not.
Can you repeat it?
Yes,
You
the
got
question
thrown off
is,
a little bit there.
how will you weigh the will of your constituents with what you think is best for the state as a whole?
The district was created 4 years ago. In the House, you have 71 Democrats, 47 Republicans. In the Senate, I believe it's 39 Democrats, 20 Republicans. This district that I'm going to represent is heavily Democratic. I am the best candidate to represent that district. And I will go out. I've already been talking to people through all the communities. I have yet to hit a couple of the small towns, and I'm getting ready to do that before the primary, but I have talked to every person I could, ministers, business people, in all areas of the district, teachers, educators. It's a district that can be a Republican district if you make me the candidate for the Republican Party.
And finally, Ms. Deadrick Wolfer.
Thank you. The 96th district is made up of a large variety of people and occupations, and I will serve at their pleasure. However, having said that, I must tell you that when I served on the Decatur Park District Board, there were times when you had to look at the big picture. And I believe that I was the person that could go back to the people in my area and talk to them and explain to them why we needed to look at a bigger picture. Sometimes the cities, at least the city that I'm from, Decatur, the city wanted to do their thing, the Park District wanted to do their thing, other people wanted to do their thing, and they forgot that we were all in this together and that we all lived in the community and that we all needed to look at the vision and the big picture. So yes, my constituents would come first and foremost, but we do have to look at the big picture to get the state of Illinois out of the crisis situation that we are in.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for closing statements. We thank you for your time and your candor this evening. We'll start in the same order we began opening statements this evening, in order of district and alphabetically. We begin with State Representative Avery Bourne, closing statements.
Thank you, and thank you again for this opportunity. You know, I think a lot of times we talk in numbers or in specific legislation, but it's good to take a step back and remember why this is so important. A couple weeks ago, I got to sit down in Pana, the City of Roses. It used to be the hub of business and activity and jobs and opportunities, and it's not anymore. And I was sitting across from Randy, and he introduced me to his daughter, his son-in-law, 4 granddaughters that were sitting there. We were talking about what life is like in Pana. His son-in-law drives to Kentucky 7 hours for his job to support his family in Pana. Talking about what kind of Illinois are we leaving his 4 granddaughters? What kind of opportunities are they going to have a job to plant their roots in Illinois? And that's exactly why a year ago I jumped into this, because we can't wait any longer. It's taken generations of the same status quo that have created this broken system in Springfield, and it's going to take a new generation of leadership in Springfield to straighten it out, and that's why I'm asking for your vote on March 15th.
Thank you. Closing statement for Christopher Hicks, running for the 95th District.
Yes, first and foremost, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here this evening, listening to us, what we stand on, and what we're about. With that being said, I'm hopeful that my message reached each and every person that was here this evening. We need to put education at the forefront of issues, lessen the tax burden on our residents, and move forward in a positive, progressive direction. It's time to move forward in a new direction in the 95th District. With that being said, it takes not a career politician, but some fresh ideas, fresh faces, and fresh people. I'm hopeful that I can receive your support and vote on March 15th. And moving forward, I hope that everyone reaches out to me, speaks to me, asks me what I'm about and what I stand for. I'm hopeful that I conveyed that message this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Running for the 95th District, Dennis Scobbie, closing statement.
I have met and spoke with many voters during this campaign. They all agree Illinois is going in the wrong direction. This state has many tough problems. Families are leaving the state. Parents are concerned about their children's education. Quality jobs are lacking. Poverty has grown. Again, I've seen this as a teacher at the high school, at the college, as a school board member. People are discouraged with government. We need a state representative with life experiences, someone who understands life's ups and downs, one with the ability to solve tough problems. I have those experiences in life. My opponents do not. I have 62 years of life experience to make those hard decisions for all the citizens of the 95th District. I would appreciate their vote on March 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scobbie. We move to closing statements in the 96th House District. We start with Cindy Deadrick Wolfer.
Thank you, and I echo the thanks of the other people on the panel for providing us the opportunity to be here tonight and to discuss a multitude of issues facing our state. Illinois has the worst credit rating, the lowest job growth, and the highest unfunded pension liability in the nation. The solution is not simple, but instead of more government spending with no accountability, we need more efficiency and effectiveness and real solutions. I believe that I have the background and the education and the experience to come to the state of Illinois and to help guide us into the future. You have a choice on March 15th, and I ask for your vote so that I can serve as a state representative in the 96th District. Hardworking taxpayers deserve leaders who tell the truth, and who offer real solutions for education and so many more issues. We deserve leaders that understand that businesses are the engines that drive and deliver a healthy economy.
Thank you, Ms. Deadrick Wolfer. Closing statement from Gary Pierce, running for the 96th House District.
If you want honesty and integrity back in the General Assembly, then you're looking at that guy. The person I have the answer to, I'm afraid of him. So if anybody come to me trying to offer me some money, I might turn them in. I want to quote Alice Walker. She's a noted author and activist. Activism is the rent I pay for living on the planet, living on this planet. And so that's what drives me. I have compassion for humanity, and I want to serve them in this capacity. They need someone in there with honesty and integrity, and the Republican Party needs a candidate in the 96th district that can beat Sue Shear. It's been proven the last 2 elections they couldn't beat her. I'm that candidate. I guarantee you a victory if you vote for me on March 15th.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. We now move to closing statements in the 99th House District, beginning with Mr. Kent Gray.
Thanks so much, everybody, for listening and for being here in the room. If you're listening to this and you've listened to it for the last hour and a half, you're probably in Springfield, Illinois, and you're probably not moving out of Illinois. You probably have friends that have left and moved away, family that have left and moved away, but you've decided to stay. It's incumbent on all of us who are here to be able to fix this problem in Illinois, or else somebody's going to have to turn out the lights as this state enters the end of a death spiral because it's been mismanaged for decades. I've represented Lincoln Land for 18 years. My record there is probably, I think, one of the most successful government units of local government here in Sangamon County. I'm proud of my record there. I'm a pro-life, pro-gun, low-tax, small government conservative, and I have been since Ronald Reagan was president. I'm the 18-year-old kid that had a National Review subscription when I was in high school. I've worked for a lot of Republicans over the years. I think those are the solutions that best move this state forward, and I would hope that you could, when you go to the polls on March 15th, vote for Kent Gray. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. And now, Representative Sara Wojcicki Jimenez.
Thanks again for having us all here today. Thank you for the great discussion. I also want to thank in the room and to the listeners for listening. I have, especially to my family and friends who are here tonight, especially my husband. This is a challenging time for our state. It's a challenging time for all of our families as we try to work toward solutions to get our state and our community back on track. The path forward is challenging, and I think that as we've all talked about, we've got to find ways to work together. If we all dig in our heels and we don't work together, both sides of the aisle with the governor, we're going to be in gridlock for a couple more years. That is not the path forward. The path forward is working together. I believe I have the experience, the skills, the temperament, honesty, and integrity to serve the residents of the 99th District. I'm very grateful to serve as the state representative, and I hope to earn your vote on March 15th.